Section 1. The town that breathes secrets. There is a town in Oregon where the trees grow too tall, the fog rolls in before noon, and every now and then, if you are standing in the right place at the wrong time, the ground hums. Not loudly, not in a way that shakes you, just quietly enough that you might think it was your own heartbeat before you realize, no, it is coming from somewhere beneath your feet. That town is Gravity Falls. And today we are going to spend a long, long time inside it. Get comfortable. Dim the lights if you like. Let whatever is in your mug get warm again. Because what we are walking into today is not a quick recap or a surface level tour. We are going deep. We are going into the walls of the Mystery Shack and behind the frames on the wall and underneath the vending machine in the basement. We are going into every corner of this show that Alex Hirsch built with the kind of obsessive, loving detail that most storytellers only dream about. 150 mysteries. Some solved, some partially answered, some still dangling in the dark like a lantern at the edge of the woods. Swaying, waiting. Gravity Falls premiered on June 15th, 2012 on Disney Channel, and it ran through February 15th, 2016. 2 seasons, 40 episodes. What that small number suggests is a tight, controlled story that someone cared enough to finish. And that is exactly what it is. Alex Hirsch created the show drawing from his own childhood, from summers spent with his twin sister Ariel at the home of their great aunt, from the particular feeling of being a kid in a strange place where the rules of ordinary life seem to be negotiable. He translated that feeling into something that has outlived its broadcast, run by a full decade and counting, and shows no signs of fading. The fictional town of Gravity Falls sits somewhere in Oregon, and we know several things about it that are not supernatural. We know it is small. We know it has a diner called Greasy's, a museum of local history, a pawn shop, a lake, and a logging tradition stretching back to its founders. We know it has exactly the kind of quiet civic life that makes it seem like nothing could ever happen here. And that quiet, that normalcy is the trick. Because something happened to Gravity Falls a very long time ago. Something got into the soil. Something found a crack between this world and wherever else things come from. And it made itself at home. And it has been here ever since. The first mystery is the most basic one. And it is one that the show never fully resolves with a clean scientific answer. Why Gravity Falls? Why here? Why this town in this valley surrounded by these specific pines? Ford Pines spent years researching this question after arriving in the late 1970s. His journals document the phenomenon in extraordinary detail. Gravity Falls sits on a convergence of dimensional energies, a place where the barrier between physical reality and the so-called nightmare realm is thinner than it should be. The weirdness that fills the town, the gnomes, the lake monsters, the shapeshifters, the floating eyeballs and miniature black holes in sentient mailboxes, it is all a symptom of that fundamental instability in the local fabric of reality. But why here specifically? The Book of Bill, released in 2024 and written by Alex Hirsch himself, gives us a much deeper prehistory than the show ever had room for. According to that book, a shaman in the distant past built the first portal intended to give Bill Cipher access to this dimension, but then thought better of it and banished him. The act of banishment, the specific curse laid down on that specific ground, is part of what made Gravity Falls the kind of place where weird things cluster. The banishment did not seal the crack, it just locked the door. The crack is still there, the light still gets through. That is Mystery 1. The town has a scar that precedes the Pines family, precedes the Northwest family, precedes any human memory of the place. Mystery 2 is the orientation of the Mystery Shack itself. If you have ever looked at a map of Gravity Falls, which appears both in the show and in the supplementary materials, you will notice that the shack sits at a very specific address, 618 Gopher Road. That number, 618, is going to come up again and again throughout this video. And when it does, I want you to start feeling what the fans felt when they first noticed it, which is the slow, quiet thrill of realizing that nothing in this show is placed by accident. Mystery 3 is one that bothered fans from the very first episode. What is wrong with the outside of the Mystery Shack? The signs on the shack change throughout the series. Not dramatically, not in ways that drive the plot, but in ways that attentive viewers catch when they pause at the right moment. The shack has been called by the Mystery Shack, the Mystery Shack, and other variations at different points. Some of these are background jokes, some are artist errors, but a few of them, the ones that appear during moments of high supernatural activity, have led fans to wonder whether the instability of the building itself is reflected in the instability of its branding. The shack sits above the universe portal in its basement, a machine that bends space-time. Would it be so strange if the signage got a little wobbly? The town of Gravity Falls has a founding history, and Mystery 4 is woven all through it. According to the show, the town was founded by Nathaniel Northwest, a celebrated figure whose statue stands in the town square and whose name graces the wealthiest family in town. The episode called Irrational Treasure peels back this story and reveals that Nathaniel Northwest was not actually the town's founder. He was a fraud, a simple pig farmer elevated to status by the government to cover up the existence of Quentin Tremblay, the 8th-and-a-half president of the United States, a man so eccentric that the government preferred to erase him from history entirely rather than deal with the embarrassment. Tremblay is funny. He is clearly played as a joke character, a wild-eyed absurdist, a parody of the great eccentric American. But he also made Gravity Falls the official town of the United States, a designation that means nothing practical but carries a faint symbolic weight. And he is last seen riding a horse backwards into the wilderness. Where did he go? Is he still out there? He was preserved in peanut brittle for decades before being freed. Peanut brittle as a preservation medium raises questions that science has not caught up with. Whether Tremblay has continued to age since his revival, or whether the brittle somehow arrested something cellular and strange in him, has never been addressed. Mystery 5, the geography of Gravity Falls beyond the town center. We see a mountain. We see forests. We see Scuttlebutt Island on the lake. We see the area around the shack and the downtown strip. But the town has a shape that extends further than what we are shown. And the three journals together document creatures and locations that never appear on screen. There's a whole ecosystem of strangeness out there in the trees, cataloged by Ford in his earliest years in Gravity Falls when he was still exploring with enthusiasm rather than dread. The Weremaid, the Island Head Beast, the Hide Behind, that creature that is always precisely at the edge of your vision, always just to your left, that turns when you turn so that you can never face it directly. These are documented. They exist in canon. And the show never needed to show them because the journals told us they were there, and that is sometimes more frightening. Mystery 6 is architectural. The Mystery Shack, as we learn in A Tale of Two Stands, has a false back wall, a vending machine that opens into a hidden staircase, multiple secret rooms that Stan built or discovered or converted over the years of impersonating his brother Ford. The shack is essentially two buildings layered on top of each other. The tourist trap on the outside and the secret research facility underneath. But the question that the show raises and never fully answers is how many of those secret passages Stan built himself, and how many were already there. Ford built the basement laboratory, but the shack predates Ford's arrival. It predates Stan's construction of the tourist attraction. Who built the deeper infrastructure? Was there someone before Ford who also felt the pull of Gravity Falls and built their own research space into it? Mystery 7 is about the town's reaction to weirdness. One of the most intriguing undercurrents in the show is that the townspeople of Gravity Falls seem to have a very high tolerance for the bizarre, broken only when something is truly impossible to explain away. They accept gnomes, or at least they forget about gnomes quickly. They accept strange sounds and lights. They accept a local eccentric who lives in a junkyard and builds elaborate machines from scrap. This tolerance is partly explained by the Blind Eye Society, which we will return to in much more depth later. But even before the Society's memory-erasing activities, the town seems primed to shrug and move on. That priming suggests a long history of conditioning, a community shaped over generations into accepting that some things do not get questioned. Who did that shaping? How far back does it go? The Northwest family has been wealthy and influential since the town's founding. There's a tapestry in their mansion that depicts Bill Cipher presiding over a burning landscape. The Northwests have known something for a very long time. Mystery 8, the forest itself. The trees around Gravity Falls are old, very old. There are shots in the show where the forest looks less like a natural growth and more like a structure, a deliberate arrangement of wood and shadow. Ford's earliest journal entries describe the trees as resonant, as if they were tuned to a frequency he could feel but not measure. There is a theory, never confirmed in canon, that the concentration of supernatural energy in the valley has, over centuries, altered the biology of the local flora. That the trees are not just trees, that they hold the local weird energy in their root systems and radiate it upward into the air, feeding it back into the atmosphere the way a terrarium recycles moisture. This would explain why the weirdness in Gravity Falls feels so local. It is not just happening near the town, it is in the ground the town grows from. Mystery 9, the stars above Gravity Falls. In the nighttime shots throughout both seasons, the sky over Gravity Falls has constellations that do not match any real-world star chart for Oregon. This could be an artistic choice, a simplified stylization of what a night sky looks like. But Gravity Falls is a show that does not make casual choices with its visual details. The star placement, if it is intentional, suggests that the sky over Gravity Falls is not the same sky visible from the surrounding region. A dimensional bleed, a micro-distortion of the local heavens, a product of whatever forces have been warping the local geometry for centuries. Dipper's nickname comes from the Big Dipper constellation, marked in his birthmark. The sky was, in some sense, written on him before he arrived. That feels meaningful. Mystery 10, and this is one I want to sit with before we move further in. Dipper's real name. Throughout the entire run of the show, we are never told Dipper Pines' given name. We know it is a nickname. We know it comes from the Big Dipper birthmark on his forehead. We know his twin sister Mabel gave it to him. But his actual name, the one on his birth certificate, the one his parents use in the privacy of their own home, was deliberately withheld by Alex Hirsch. A later expanded material confirmed that his first name is Mason, Mason Pines, and that his middle name, along with Mabel's, is one of their parents' first names, a beautiful family tradition that we can see from the outside but whose specifics remain private. Just as his parents themselves are absent from the show, mentioned but never seen it, the decision to withhold the name for so long was intentional. Hirsch said in interviews that he wanted Dipper to feel like a character the audience could inhabit, and that a real given name might have broken that slight sense of identification. The name Mason is now confirmed, but the nickname was always the truth of who this boy is. In Gravity Falls, what you call yourself is more powerful than what you are called. And that, right there, is one of the deepest things the show believes. If you are watching this from your bed, your couch, the back of a car, a late shift, a quiet afternoon, wherever you are and whatever time it is where you are, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Tell me the time and the place you are watching from, and if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It is the best way to make sure you see everything we put out, and it helps the channel more than you know. Section 2. The 3 journals and what lives in their pages. Let us talk about the journals. There are 3 of them. Journal 1, Journal 2, and Journal 3. Written by Stanford Pines, also known as Ford, the six-fingered author, the missing uncle, the man who went through a dimensional portal and did not come back for 30 years. Each journal covers a different period of his research in Gravity Falls, and each one escalates in both ambition and paranoia until the third reads almost like a confession as much as a field guide. Journal 1, Mystery 11. Ford began his research without any knowledge of Bill Cipher. This is documented clearly by the content and tone of the first journal compared to the later ones. His earliest entries are curious, almost gleeful. A man who has found the most interesting place on Earth and cannot believe his good fortune. The creatures are cataloged with enthusiasm. The gnomes, the manitors, the unicorns, even the geese that are secretly terrifying. He is having the time of his life. And then something shifts. By the time he starts Journal 2, there is a new edge to the writing, a wariness. He has encountered something that has changed the quality of his attention from delight to vigilance. That transition point, the moment when Ford went from explorer to frightened witness, is never shown directly. It is implied by the difference between the books. Mystery 12. What did McGucket actually see in the portal? Fiddleford Hadron McGucket was Stanford's college friend, a brilliantly gifted inventor who Ford brought to Gravity Falls to help build the universe portal. In the early testing of the machine, McGucket was accidentally sucked partway through. He pulled himself back out. But whatever he saw in those moments inside the portal was enough to destroy him. He did not describe it clearly. He just said he saw something terrible. He said things he should not have seen, things no human mind was built to hold. And he built a memory-erasing device specifically to make himself forget. We hear a fragment of what he saw in the form of a broken, half-gibberish prophecy. When gravity falls and Earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye. The beast with one eye is Bill Cipher, almost certainly. But the full shape of what McGucket glimpsed, the complete horror that made him erase himself rather than carry it, is still unknown. The Book of Bill gives us slightly more context about the nightmare realm and what exists inside it. But the specific vision McGucket experienced is his private terror. It lives in those memory canisters, and the last time we saw those canisters, they were presumably still somewhere in the ruins of the Blind Eye Society's hall, unless Weird Mageddon destroyed the building entirely. Mystery 13. Journal 2 ends up in the hands of Gideon Gleeful. This is something the show establishes and then essentially moves past. Because by the time it becomes relevant, the focus has shifted to the events around the portal. But the journey of Journal 2 from Ford's hiding place to Gideon's possession is a story we only see the edges of. Gideon knew what the journal was. He had read it deeply enough to know how to summon Bill Cipher. He had enough knowledge of the town's supernatural infrastructure to understand the significance of the Mystery Shack deed. A 9-year-old child had somehow acquired a deeply dangerous artifact and understood enough of its contents to use it. This suggests either that someone guided Gideon toward the journal, that he had access to other sources of supernatural knowledge the show does not explain, or that he is genuinely one of the most prodigiously dangerous people in Gravity Falls despite his age and his ridiculous personality. Mystery 14, Ford's filing system. The 3 journals were hidden in 3 different locations around Gravity Falls, each chosen for specific security reasons. Journal 3 was in the woods, under a particular tree protected by a series of environmental conditions. Journal 2 ended up in Gideon's possession. Journal 1, the oldest, was hidden so successfully that its precise original location is never shown in the main series. Ford was meticulous about separating the books because together they represented a complete guide to the most dangerous knowledge in the region. Apart, they were harder to weaponize. He even removed pages from various journals to make them incomplete. Those missing pages are a mystery unto themselves. Mystery 15. The missing pages of the journals. Ford tore out pages he considered too dangerous to leave in circulation. Pages about the nightmare realm. Pages about the portal's full capabilities. Pages about specific weaknesses in the dimensional barrier. Those pages exist somewhere. They were not destroyed because Ford does not destroy knowledge. He hides it. The Book of Bill contains some additional material that echoes what might have been in those missing pages, but the complete text of what Ford removed and where he put it remains unknown. Mystery 16 is about the margins. Every physical copy of the journals is loaded with secondary writing, annotations, addenda, corrections, and marginal notes. Some of these are from Ford. Some are from other hands. The special edition of Journal 3, which comes with a black light for illumination, reveals additional layers of text invisible under normal lighting. Under black light, the journal bleeds with information that was always there, just hidden from ordinary light. Entire subplots and character notes and warnings are written in invisible ink throughout its pages. The most dedicated fans have cataloged what they found, but the conversation around what it means is still active, because some of the blacklight text points toward events and entities that were never addressed in the main series. Mystery 17. The Shifter, also known as the shape-shifting creature that Ford documented in Journal 3, and that Dipper encounters Bakashers in the episode Into the Bunker. The Shifter was captured and imprisoned in the government bunker beneath Gravity Falls, a secret facility maintained by some unnamed federal organization, possibly the same one Agents Powers and Trigger work for. The Shifter is fascinating for multiple reasons, but the most startling one is this. It can take any form it has ever scanned, and it has been alive for a very long time. How long? Long enough to have documented everything it has seen and stored it in its biological memory. When Dipper faces the Shifter and asks what the most feared creature in Gravity Falls is, the Shifter becomes something deeply wrong, something that is covered in shadow and implies a form beyond what it can fully show. What does the Shifter know? What has it seen? What forms has it stored in whatever years preceded its capture? It is in a government bunker, presumably still there, presumably still shape-shifting alone in the dark, still remembering everything. Mystery 18. The Gobblewonker, or rather, the question of what built it. In the show's third episode, Dipper and Mabel search for the legendary lake monster, the Gobblewonker, and what they ultimately find is a robotic duplicate built by Old Man McGucket. This is treated as a disappointment at first, a reveal that deflates the supernatural premise. But step back and think about what that actually means. An elderly man living in a junkyard, suffering from severe self-inflicted memory damage, built a working, functional, enormous mechanical creature and deployed it in the lake in an attempt to get his son's attention. The technological competence required for that alone is extraordinary. And it suggests that even at his most deteriorated, McGucket retained enough of his original genius to produce engineering that would have been remarkable coming from a fully functioning research team. What else did McGucket build in those lost decades? What sits in the junkyard that nobody has cataloged? The show gives us glimpses of his inventions, and they are consistently impressive. A fully operational robot, a machine capable of erasing specific memories with precision. The Shacktron, the mech that helps defeat Bill's henchmen during Weirdmageddon. McGucket's output, even in a mentally compromised state, represents some of the most advanced technology in the show's universe. Ford is the theoretical physicist, the interdimensional theorist. McGucket was and still is the hands that turn theory into working machines. Mystery 19. The content of Journal 1 that we have never seen. Journal 1 focuses on Ford's first 3 years in Gravity Falls. It contains what he calls his 30-hour arm wrestling challenge with a unicorn, which is exactly the kind of entry that would make you love this man. But it also contains his earliest observations about the supernatural geography of the town, his attempts to understand the source of the weirdness before he had any framework for it, before Bill entered the picture and gave him a very specific and dangerous framework. Those early impressions, the raw observations of a scientist encountering something genuinely new, would tell us a great deal about what Gravity Falls looked like from the outside before someone started pulling threads. Mystery 20. All three journals, after Bill's defeat, were thrown into the bottomless pit. This is a deliberate act by the Pines family. They have won. They have survived. And they decide that the safest thing to do with 3 volumes of the most dangerous supernatural knowledge in the Pacific Northwest is to throw them into a hole that is, apparently, bottomless. The things thrown into the bottomless pit emerge somewhere else. The show established this. Whatever went in came out somewhere. The question of where the journals wound up, whether they are floating in another dimension, whether they fell through to somewhere that has its own inhabitants who could read them, whether they are slowly drifting in a void that has no floor, is never resolved. The Pines threw away the map, and somewhere the map is still traveling. Section 3. Bill Cipher and the Nightmare That Wore a Party Hat by. Party Hat. Let us talk about the Yellow Triangle. Bill Cipher was over 1 trillion years old at the time of his defeat in the Weirdmageddon finale. He is described in the lore as a 2-dimensional, interdimensional dream demon, which is a phrase that sounds almost funny until you sit with it. 2-dimensional. He exists, fundamentally, in a plane. He experiences the universe as a surface, as a flat geometric reality, and he found a way to reach into 3-dimensional space and touch it, manipulate it, ultimately enter it. The name Bill Cipher is itself a kind of joke that the character is in on. A cipher is a code, a way of hiding information. Bill is, in his essence, a layer of concealment, a thing that appears to be something simple and readable while hiding depths that you cannot reach without the right key. Mystery 21. Where Bill actually came from. He is from a dimension called Euclidia, a flat plane world of 2-dimensional beings. The Book of Bill finally gives us a window into his origins, and they are genuinely tragic in a way that the show only hints at. Euclidia was not a hellish place. It was an ordered, geometric world of beings who lived in patterns and structures, and who, by all available evidence, were capable of something resembling civilization. Bill hated it. He found his home dimension suffocating, the orderliness of it oppressive, the predictability of his flat world neighbors an insult to his intelligence. He destroyed Euclidia. He burned his own home dimension into nothing. The Book of Bill complicates this somewhat, suggesting that the destruction was not entirely cold-blooded, that there is guilt underneath his denial, that the last atoms of Euclidia he keeps in his hat suggest a grief he is not capable of admitting. But the fact remains, Bill Cipher chose obliteration over belonging. He made himself homeless, and then he spent the rest of his incomprehensible lifespan reaching into other dimensions and destabilizing them, because that is what he does. Mystery 22? How long has Bill been watching humanity? This is one of the most genuinely unsettling aspects of his history. Before he found Ford, Bill had been attempting to use humans as portals for a very long time. The Book of Bill documents his reach across centuries. There is evidence of his influence on the ancient Egyptians, his connection to the Eye of Providence that appears on their monuments and later ends up on American currency. In Ford's files on Bill, there are pictures of pyramids and the Eye of Providence, suggesting that the cultures that built with pyramid shapes may have been, at some level, responding to Bill's attempts to create physical structures shaped like him, structures that resonated with his dimensional frequency and could serve as anchors for his influence. He worked with the Aztecs. He showed up in medieval Europe. He left his mark across human civilization as a recurring image, an eye inside a triangle, appearing and reappearing throughout art history in contexts that range from spiritual iconography to Masonic symbolism to the back of the American dollar bill. Every time that image appears in history, you can ask yourself whether it was independent human symbolism or whether something was reaching through time and space and very patiently building the conditions for what happened in Gravity Falls in 2012. Mystery 23, The Nature of Deals with Bill. One of the most consistent rules in the show's supernatural system is that Bill operates through contracts. He makes deals. He needs consent or the appearance of consent to do what he does. He cannot enter a conscious mind without being invited in. He can haunt dreams, which is its own terrifying power, but the direct possession of a waking person requires that the person shake his hand and agree, even if that agreement is extracted through manipulation or coercion. This rule has theological roots. The devil, in most traditions, needs your willingness. The magic word is yes. And so Bill spent his entire relationship with Ford engineering the circumstances under which Ford would say yes, would invite him in, would shake his hand, and agree to something without understanding the full cost. The blue fire that appears around every handshake in Bill's presence is the visual marker of a binding contract, and it means that somewhere in the supernatural laws governing his power, verbal or physical consent has genuine legal weight. What are the limits of these contracts? What happens when someone breaks a deal with Bill? The show implies that breaking a deal with Bill is catastrophically bad, but we never see the mechanics of what he can actually enforce. He cannot create consequences on his own outside of dreams, or at least he could not until Weirdmageddon. Before his physical manifestation, his power to punish deal breakers was constrained in ways that the show hints at but never specifies. Mystery 24, The Bill Cipher Statue in Reedsport, Oregon. This is the real-world physical manifestation of the show's lore, built by Alex Hirsch and hidden in the Oregon woods as the ultimate prize in the cipher hunt of 2016. But the statue's placement in the real world, and specifically Alex Hirsch's warning to the treasure hunters that they should never shake the statue's hand, is a joke that cuts uncomfortably close to the in-universe logic we just described. Hirsch did not say, "Look at the statue." He said, "Do not shake its hand." As if the rule about consent and physical contact applied to the stone replica. As if Bill might still be in there? When the group that found the statue shook its hand anyway, Grunkle Stan's voice on the USB drive inside the box told them they had done well, and it began with him singing "We'll Meet Again," which is the song Bill sang during his final moments in Weirdmageddon, which suggests, at minimum, that whoever wrote that message wanted you to feel the possibility that it was not Stan speaking at all. Mystery 25, Dimension 52. In the show's supplementary materials and in the Book of Bill, various alternate dimensions are referenced and numbered. The dimension that contains the main events of Gravity Falls is never given a number in the show itself, but the lore around it references many adjacent dimensions that Ford traveled through during his 30 years of exile. Some of these are directly referenced. Most are named but not described. And the question of what is in the numbered dimensions, whether they contain life, whether they contain versions of characters we know, whether Bill has already reached into some of them and destabilized them the way he tried to destabilize this one, is completely open. Mystery 26. Bill's eye. The pupil in Bill's eye is always a black slit. Not a circle, not a dot, a slit. This is a detail that animators do not add without a reason. A slit pupil in nature belongs to ambush predators, to animals whose depth perception is calibrated, not for forward-facing pursuit, but for detecting sideways motion, for sensing prey approaching from unexpected angles. Bill's eye marks him as something that is almost always watching everything, all around him, simultaneously. He is not looking at you. He is perceiving you from a peripheral awareness so wide it includes the entirety of his field of vision at once. That is a disturbing thing to put in a children's cartoon character. That is a disturbing thing to put in any character. Mystery 27. What exactly happened in Stan's mind when Ford used the memory gun? The plan that defeated Bill required Bill to enter Stan's mind voluntarily. Stan told Bill that his mind contained all of Ford's memories, transferred there by touching hands. Bill believed him and entered. Inside Stan's mind, Bill found himself not in Ford's structured memory palace, but in Stan's chaotic, emotional, sentimental, gloriously cluttered interior. And when Ford used the memory gun on Stan, he erased Stan's mind in the moment Bill was inside it. Bill had nowhere to go. His physical form was trapped in a dying mindscape. But here is what we do not know. The memory gun erases memories. It does not destroy thoughts. It does not destroy identity. It does not, to be precise, kill anything. It removes specific data. And the question of whether Bill's consciousness was truly annihilated by the gun, or whether he was somehow compressed, archived, stored in a way that his later invocation of the axolotl allowed him to access, is something the show gestures toward without resolving. The Book of Bill confirms he survived in some form. The mechanics of how or where the mystery lives. Mystery 28. Bill's hat. He is always wearing a top hat, which in context seems like a fashion choice for a character defined by his flamboyance and theatrical evil. But the Book of Bill reveals that the hat contains the last remaining atoms of Euclidia, his destroyed home dimension. He is literally wearing his grief as an accessory and pretending it is style. The hat is not vanity. The hat is a reliquary. It is the only physical artifact of everything he burned. If the hat were destroyed, those atoms would scatter into the universe and Euclidia would be truly, finally gone. He keeps it. He will not put it down. Katzenberg, Method 29. What Ford and Bill talked about in the lost pages. The Book of Bill contains fragments of Ford's journal entries from periods that were not in the show, including a section where Ford describes talking with Bill in the mindscape about things he had never discussed with anyone. Topics that ranged from the nature of reality to his loneliness as a child to his complicated feelings about his brother. Bill was the first real friend Ford had in decades. That is an awful thing to know. And it means that some of what Bill knew about the Pines family, the specific vulnerabilities and desires and regrets, he did not steal or spy. He was just paying attention while Ford thought he was safe. Mystery 30. Will Bill return? His final words in the show, spoken in reversed audio, are a plea to the axolotl. My time has come to burn. I invoke the ancient power that I may return. The Book of Bill confirms that he did not die. He was taken to the Theraprism, an interdimensional rehabilitation facility outside of space and time, where he is supposed to undergo karmic rehabilitation before being reincarnated as something smaller, something with less power to cause harm. A lizard. A spore. Bill, of course, does not intend to rehabilitate. The Book of Bill is itself a therapeutic journal that he was assigned to keep and then broke the rules by sending to Earth, which is exactly the kind of thing you would expect from him. But here's what the poem in that book says about his potential redemption. One way to absolve his crime, a different form, a different time. The possibility of return is encoded into the text. Alex Hirsch has said that he likes stories that complete their emotional arcs but leave lingering threads, and that Bill's final message is one of those threads, a window he has kept open in case he ever chooses to walk back through it. Section 4. The Pines Family and All Their Buried Things. The Pines family is the heart of Gravity Falls, and also its most complicated mystery. Not because their story is unclear, but because it is so thoroughly hidden inside itself. A Russian doll of secrets inside secrets. Mystery 31. Stanley Pines Before Gravity Falls. We know from A Tale of Two Stans that Stan and Ford grew up in Glass Shard Beach, New Jersey, the sons of Philbrick and Karen Pines. Their father was a tough, uncompromising man who pushed both boys hard. And Stan, the less academically gifted twin, bore the brunt of that pressure differently. When Stan accidentally destroyed Ford's chance at the prestigious Pines Institute scholarship, Philbrick threw him out of the house. Literally. Told him never to come back. What Stan did in the years between that ejection and eventually arriving at what would become the Mystery Shack is sketched out but never fully mapped. He ran scams. He drifted. He had encounters with various criminal enterprises that left him with a file at the police department in Colombia. He failed at everything. He missed his brother. And eventually, following the coded plea in the postcard Ford sent him before disappearing into the portal, Stan found his way to Gravity Falls and spent 30 years working quietly and patiently to build the machine that would bring Ford back. The question of how Stan survived those 30 years emotionally, how he maintained the secret of Ford's disappearance while pretending to be him for decades, how he kept the mystery alive while running a tourist trap that was partly a cover and partly just something to fill the days, is one that the show addresses emotionally without addressing practically. Stan is tough. Stan is resilient in the specific way of someone who learned early that nobody was coming to save him. But 30 years is a very long time to carry a secret alone. The memories that were erased to save everyone else, the ones Ford had to work to restore using old videos and his own patient love, came back. But at some cost. Not all of Stan's memories returned fully. There are gaps. What is in those gaps? Mystery 32, the Stano War. At the series' end, Stan and Ford leave Gravity Falls together on Stan's boat, the Stano War II, to sail the world and hunt sea monsters. This is everything Stan ever wanted, and it is given to him cleanly and completely. The show does not complicate it. They sail away and they are together, and it is beautiful. But the Stano War II sets off into a world where dimensional instability has been resolved locally, in Gravity Falls specifically, but has not necessarily been resolved globally. Bill was attempting to spread Weirdmageddon beyond the town's limits and was stopped by the barrier. But the fundamental thinness of the dimensional walls was not reversed by his defeat. If Bill made that thinness worse during his 30-year involvement with Gravity Falls, then the ocean, with its depth and its darkness and its own ancient strangeness, is full of things that might have been disturbed by the local event. Stan wanted sea monsters. He may get more than he was asking for, Mystery 33. The Pines twins' parents. They exist in the show as voices on phones and as the people who sent Dipper and Mabel to Grunkelstan for the summer. They are never seen. Their names are technically known from expanded materials, but on screen they are entirely absent presences. The choice to exclude them is clearly deliberate. The story needed the kids to be on their own, to have no safety net, no adult authority to appeal to who is both fully functional and fully present. Stan is their guardian, but he is also their problem. The parents are the warm, distant promise of a different life that the show does not need to show because the summer is what matters. But the absence of the parents creates a mystery by omission. They sent their children to a town that turned out to be literally the most supernaturally dangerous location in the United States. They did not know that, presumably. But the question of how much they knew, whether the supernatural nature of the Pines family's connection to Gravity Falls was something that filtered down through family conversations over the years, whether the twins' own unusual perceptiveness and comfort with the bizarre was something that had been quietly cultivated, is never answered. Mystery 34. Philbrick Pines. The grandfather who threw Stan out. The man who shaped the two brothers through his severity and his impossible expectations. We see him in flashbacks, hard-faced and unforgiving, and we know that he told Stan he never wanted to see him again. The show treats him as backstory, as the original wound that explains Stan's emotional armor. But Philbrick Pines lived long enough to watch his son become famous, in at least the limited sense that the Mystery Shack made a minor splash in tabloid-adjacent weird circles. Did he ever know what his sons accomplished? Did Stan ever contact him again? Did Ford? Mystery 35, Ford's extra fingers. Stanford Pines was born with 6 fingers on each hand, a rare genetic trait called polydactyly. In the show, this marks him as exceptional from birth, literally outstanding in a visible way that sets him apart. The 6-fingered hand becomes Ford's personal symbol, stamped on all 3 journals, recognizable to Dipper from the very first moment he finds Journal 3 in the woods. But polydactyly is genetic, inheritable. The question of whether the Pines family line carries this trait more broadly, whether there are other 6-fingered Pines relatives somewhere, whether the trait was what drew the original Pines ancestors to Gravity Falls in the first place through some mechanism of resonance between genetic difference and dimensional weirdness, is left entirely open. Mystery 36, the year before the twins arrived. The summer of 2012 is the summer of the show, but the shack, the town, the supernatural activity, all of it was functioning in the summer of 2011, the summer before. What happened in Gravity Falls the year before Dipper found the journal? Were there other visitors? Were there incidents? McGucket was still in his deteriorated state. The Blind Eye Society was still operating. Bill was still watching. The town was still humming, and without the Pines twins there to notice and investigate, it was all just happening in a silence no one was interrupting. Mystery 37, the Zodiac and its players, which we will return to in much more depth later. But here in the family section, it is worth noting that Ford knew about the Zodiac. He had documented it. The symbols had been observed. He knew on some level that certain people were connected to the larger supernatural story of Gravity Falls in ways that went beyond coincidence. He did not know that Stan was one of them. He may not have known how many of the people in his brother's orbit had become, through proximity and supernatural exposure, part of something older and larger than any of them had chosen. Mystery 38, Mabel's time in the bubble. During Weirdmageddon, Bill sealed Mabel inside a dream bubble, a place where she could live in a perpetual fantasy reality that gave her everything she wanted. Inside the bubble, time moved differently. Mabel was there for days in real-world time, but experienced what felt like an extended, rich, fully realized alternate life. The trauma of that experience, of being pulled out of it back into the real world, is something the show acknowledges but does not dwell on. Mabel is resilient. She processes things through sweaters and optimism and genuine love for the people around her. But she was offered a perfect world and she lived in it for days and then she had to let it go. That scar exists. The question of how it shaped her after the summer is something the audience holds without resolution. Mystery 39, Ford's 30 years of exile. He traveled through countless dimensions. He learned from beings whose intelligence vastly exceeded anything on Earth. He developed the 6-sided portal key. He encountered the axolotl's dimension. He saw things that the show only touches in scattered references. Those 3 decades are an entire unexplored saga, and the materials we have only gesture at the edges of it. If there were ever a story worth telling in the Gravity Falls universe, it is Ford Pines, alone in the multiverse, learning the laws of reality, one brutal lesson at a time. Mystery 40, Will Dipper and Mabel return to Gravity Falls? The show ends with them leaving for home. Ford and Stan leave by sea. Suze takes over the shack. Life continues. The town persists. But the twins are changed, permanently and irreversibly, by what they experienced. Dipper was invited to stay by Ford and chose to go back to his sister instead. That choice preserved his connection to Mabel and his connection to his actual life. But he has Journal 3, or rather had it before it went into the pit, and he has everything he learned, and the town is still there. The weird is not over just because Bill is defeated. The dimensional thinness does not reverse. The creatures do not vanish. Gravity Falls is still Gravity Falls. Section 5. ciphers, codes, and the art of hiding things in plain sight. Alex Hirsch designed Gravity Falls as a show that you could watch passively and enjoy as a funny, heartwarming mystery comedy, and also as a show you could actively decode, investigate, and participate in as something closer to an alternate reality game. Every episode has a cryptogram. Every episode has at least one hidden message. Some episodes have many more, and the progression of the ciphers across the 2 seasons tells its own story about the show's growing ambition. Mystery 41, The First Whisper. At the end of every episode's opening theme, there is a whispered voice. In the first 6 episodes, that whisper, played backwards, says 3 letters back. This is the key for the Caesar cipher, a simple but elegant substitution code where every letter is replaced by the letter 3 positions behind it in the alphabet. Apply that to VWDQ, LVQRW, ZKDW, KHVHHPV. The coded text that flashes briefly at the end of the opening theme, and you get, Stan is not what he seems. The show told you in its very first moments, before you knew what any of those words meant, before Stan's secret was anywhere close to being revealed. In a whisper, played backwards, at a volume most people would miss entirely. This is not foreshadowing in the conventional sense. This is hiding something in the furniture of the show and waiting to see if anyone goes looking. Mystery 42. The whisper changes. At episode 7, the whisper shifts to switch A with Z. This is the key for the @bash cipher, which reverses the alphabet, turning A into Z and Z into A. At episode 14, it becomes 26 letters, the key for the A1Z26 cipher, where each letter is replaced by its numerical position in the alphabet. By the time season 2 begins, the ciphers advance to the Visionaire cipher, which is dramatically more complex. The Visionaire cipher requires a keyword to decode, and those keywords are hidden inside the episodes themselves. Written on background props, printed on jars in the background, stitched into the set design. This escalation mirrors the show's narrative arc. Season 1 is about discovery. The ciphers are accessible, solvable with patience and a piece of paper. Season 2 is about deeper knowledge, about the information you have to work harder to find, about secrets that require community effort to crack. The audience had to start working together in Season 2, the way the characters had to start working together in Season 2. The form of the puzzle matched the content of the story. Mystery 43, the Season 2 Visionaire keywords. Each Season 2 episode hides its keywords somewhere in the background. Shed comes from Into the Bunker. Wanch comes from Society of the Blind Eye. Pines, beautifully, is the keyword for A Tale of Two Stans, the episode that finally tells us everything about the brothers. Axolotl, the keyword for the series finale, was itself a clue about what Bill's last words meant. The keywords are not random. They are chosen to reflect the emotional content of the episode. The puzzle is always thematically coherent with the story. Every code says something about the episode it is in. Mystery 44, the credit page ciphers. Beyond the end credit cryptograms, individual journal pages and in-show documents carry their own encoded content. The journal entry on Bill's cipher includes a symbol substitution cipher that, when decoded, reads, Liar, Monster, Snappy Dresser. This is Ford's private assessment, in code, of the being he once considered a friend. The humor of Snappy Dresser next to Liar and Monster is the show at its best. Precise, dark, and somehow also funny. Mystery 45. Not What He Seems contains the cryptogram, He's lying. Someone you know is hiding the truth. This aired during the episode in which Stan's secret was on the verge of being fully exposed. The cryptogram was the show telling you, in code, in the credits, while you were still reeling from the episode's revelations, that there was more to find. Mystery 46. The binary code ensues in The Real Girl. The episode that introduces the dating simulator character, Jiffany, contains messages encoded in binary, the language of computers, placed in the background of scenes involving her. These messages are in keeping with her nature as a corrupted AI, communicating in a language she would use, hiding her commentary in a system that most viewers would not think to decode. Mystery 47. The reversed audio beyond the theme song whisper. Multiple episodes contain audio that is only meaningful when played backwards. Gideon's chant before summoning Bill in Dreamscaperers, played backwards, is simply the words backwards message, a meta joke about the technique. But other reversed audio in the show is more substantive. Bill's final words, as noted earlier, are a plea to the axolotl. The Weirdmageddon opening theme contains a reversed Bill saying, "I'm watching you, nerds," which becomes the most alarming possible thing for a cartoon villain to say while you are watching his cartoon. Mystery 48. The website. This is not a website.com is a real website, maintained as part of the show's extended lore, and it has been active and evolving since the show's run. During the release of the Book of Bill in 2024, new content appeared on the site gated behind passwords, some of which were printed in the book itself, some hidden in its illustration details, some embedded in the stitching of props, some encoded in Morse code hidden in background elements. The community cracked most of them within days. New content emerged, including previously unseen journal entries, a story about Bill's fight with Time Baby, a story about Bill offering Pacifica Northwest a deal, and a 12-page account of a cult Bill started in the 1950s as part of one of his many attempts to build his portal. The website continues to be a living part of the show's extended universe. Its password-locked sections, a promise that there is still more to find. Mystery 49, The Rumble's Revenge Game. Before the character Bill Cipher had been formally introduced in the television show, Disney released an official online game called Rumble's Revenge, in which Dipper and Mabel fight cryptid creatures. If you interacted with 12 specific objects in the game, a message appeared from a mysterious triangle guy. Decoded, that message read, "My name is Bill." Fans knew Bill's name before the show told them. The game was released while the audience was still in Season 1, still wondering who or what the triangle in the opening credits represented. The show was having a conversation with its audience about its own revelations, giving attentive players a head start. Mystery 50. The cipher that still has not been decoded. On the website, in the materials from Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained Shorts, there is a numerical code at the top and bottom of one page that has never been solved by the fandom. The numbers exceed 26, ruling out A1Z26. It does not respond to Caesar. It does not respond to Atbash. It does not use known Visionaire keys. It sits there, uncracked. A reminder that not every mystery in this show is meant to be solved immediately, or perhaps at all. Section 6. The number 618 and patterns woven through everything. Before we move into deeper territory, let us pause on something that fans noticed early, and that rewards the kind of slow, meditative attention that this kind of video is designed for. The number 618 appears in Gravity Falls more often than any other specific number, and its placement is never accidental. Mystery 51, where 618 appears. The show's main production code is G618. The Mystery Shack is located at 618 Gopher Road. Stan's prison number in Not What He Seems is 061800. Stan's faked car crash occurred in a ditch next to Highway 618. The introduction page in Journal 3 is dated June 18th, which is June 18th. In Society of the Blind Eye, the TV in McGucket's memory says day 618. In Blendon's game, the time-lock Cyclocks display 618 on their faces. In Sock Opera, when Bill turns his eye into a clock during his deal with Dipper, the clock reads 618. Roadside Attraction has one of the phone numbers on Dipper's arms, ending in 0618. This number is everywhere. It is in the background of almost every episode. And the show directly addresses it in Old Man McGucket's Conspiracy Corner Marathon, in a segment literally titled 618, in which McGucket says the number has been haunting his dreams. He says it is a clue from a creature from another dimension that he is convinced means they are all just drawings on a page. Mystery 52. What 618 actually means. The production code G618 reflects Alex Hirsch's birthday. June 18th, 1985. June 18th is also his twin sister Ariel's birthday, because they are twins, because the show is partly about twins, because the number that encodes the creator's birthday is the same number that encodes the origins of the story. The number is not a supernatural mystery in universe. It is a real-world signature, a love letter from Alex Hirsch to his own creation, stamped invisibly on every surface. Except McGucket's line about it being a clue from a creature from another dimension, that they are all just drawings on a page, is meta. Genuinely meta. McGucket is having an in-universe moment of fourth-wall-adjacent awareness, suggesting that the recurring number is a signal from the creator dimension, proof that they are inside a story. The show is using its own birthday number to make a philosophical point about the nature of fictional existence. The characters live in a world maintained by a mind outside their world. The number is their creator's fingerprint. Mystery 53. Blendon Blandon's appearances before his introduction. The time traveler Blendon Blandon, with his camo suit and his perpetual stress, appears in 3 episodes before his formal introduction in The Time Traveler's Pig. He is in the audience of Headhunters. He is watching Old Man McGucket from across the water in The Legend of the Gobblewonker. He is hiding in the bushes in Tourist Trapped, the very first episode. He was always there. The show placed him in the background of every scene that his later self went back to fix, creating a visual loop of temporal causality that attentive rewatchers would notice before they had the context to understand it. Blendon was here is also written on the wall. Stan breaks down to find the Stan a war boat in A Tale of Two Stans. Blendon was there before the events of the show, apparently making his mark in the structural fabric of the building. Mystery 54. Agent Powers and Trigger. Like Blendon, the 2 federal agents tasked with investigating the Mystery Shack appear in the background of multiple episodes before their formal introduction in Scary Oak, the Season 2 premiere. They are in the audience at Mabel's puppet show in Sock Opera. They are at the mall in Seuss and The Real Girl. They are behind Seuss's truck in Society of the Blind Eye. They are at the music festival in Love God. They are everywhere, watching, which is exactly what their job is. The show told you they were watching long before it told you who they were. Mystery 55. The pine tree on Dipper's hat. This is one of the most satisfying pieces of symmetry in the show. The symbol on Dipper's hat is a pine tree. In the cipher wheel, the symbol representing Dipper is also a pine tree. His hat, worn before he ever arrived in Gravity Falls, before he found the journal, before any of the supernatural events began, already bore the symbol that the supernatural cosmology of the town had assigned to him. The symbol precedes the person. The town was already expecting him. Mystery 56, Mabel Sweaters. Mabel Pines wears a different sweater in almost every episode, and many of those sweaters are loaded with visual information. The shooting star is her zodiac symbol and appears throughout. The other animals and images on her sweaters often reflect the plot of the episode they appear in, foreshadowing the story before it happens. Her sweaters are, in a sense, her version of the cryptograms, a layer of information encoded in costume rather than text. Mystery 57. Gompers the Goat. The Mystery Shack has a goat named Gompers, who appears throughout the show eating things he should not eat, and generally being goat-shaped and unconcerned. What does Gompers know? He lives on the property. He is there every day. He was there when Stan built the tourist trap. He was there through 30 years of hidden portal activity. He is there during Weirmageddon, apparently unaffected. Hirsch has joked that Gompers is eternal and evil, a comment that exists in the space between cast-off bit and genuine in-universe implication. There is a theory, treated with varying degrees of seriousness, that Gompers is a supernatural entity wearing the form of a goat, an observer or a guardian whose dietary destruction of anything left in his reach is either meaningless animal behavior or the calculated destruction of information that someone does not want found. Section 7. The Zodiac, the Wheel, and the Shape of Prophecy. The Zodiac, also called the Cipher Wheel, is a circular diagram that flashes briefly at the end of the Gravity Falls opening credits. For most of Season 1, viewers registered it as a spooky image, a flash of something occult and slightly ominous without necessarily understanding what they were looking at. By the finale, its meaning was clear. The Zodiac contains 12 symbols. Each symbol corresponds to a specific person. When those people stand in the right arrangement and work together, their combined power can destroy Bill Cipher. Mystery 58. Who mapped the Zodiac first and when? Ford knows about the Zodiac. He has it documented. He presents it in the finale as the plan, the method by which Bill can be defeated. But the Zodiac existed before Ford arrived in Gravity Falls. Its imagery predates his research. The symbols on the wheel were being used by the show's characters before those characters knew they were connected. Mabel's shooting star sweaters, Dipper's pine tree hat, Stan's fez with its crescent marking, Robbie's hoodie with its sewn-up heart. These are all Zodiac symbols, worn by people who were wearing them before they arrived in Gravity Falls, before they had any reason to. This suggests that the Zodiac is not a tool that Ford designed. It is a pattern that the universe arranged, a configuration of people who were drawn together by forces larger than any of them chose. Ford may have been the one who mapped it and named it and attempted to use it, but the Zodiac was already forming before he understood it. Mystery 59. The 12 symbols and their correspondences. The pine tree, Dipper pines, the shooting star, Mabel pines, the crescent moon, Grunkle Stan, the six-fingered hand, Stanford Pines Ford, the question mark, Seuss, the ice bag, Wendy Corduroy, the sewn-up heart, Robbie Valentino, the llama, Pacifica Northwest, the broken glasses, Old Man McGucket, the pencil, Gideon Gleeful, formerly, the tent, uncertain, the symbol in the center. This is the space where Bill himself would be placed if he were part of the arrangement, which he is not, as he is the target of the Zodiac's power. Mystery 60. Why Gideon breaks the circle. In the climactic attempt to use the Zodiac, the assembled group comes close but does not complete the arrangement, because Stan and Ford begin arguing with each other about old grievances, and the chain breaks. This is often read as a commentary on how even in existential crisis, humans struggle to set aside personal grudges, and that reading is correct and satisfying. But there is another layer. The arrangement's central weakness is the Pines brothers, the two people with the most complicated relationship in the group. The Zodiac requires everyone to trust each other completely. The hardest people in the world for the other to trust are each other. That is not a coincidence. That is the Zodiac selecting its most challenging link and placing it at the center. Mystery 61. The Zodiac and Pacifica Northwest. Pacifica's symbol is the llama. Her place in this supernatural arrangement was foreshadowed before she had any character development beyond being Mabel's rival. She is a Northwest. Her family is depicted on a tapestry in their own mansion, worshipping Bill Cipher. Her family built their wealth on a lie. on the exploitation of the town's founding story, on a promise to the locals that was never fulfilled, and instead replaced with a bell that conditioned Pacifica into compliance like an animal. And yet the Zodiac needs her. She is part of the configuration that defeats Bill. The daughter of a family that served him becomes part of the arrangement that undoes him. Mystery 62. Bill's Wheel in the Real World. A real-world prop version of the Cipher Wheel exists. It was displayed at exhibitions and conventions during the show's run, and its physical existence raises the question that the Book of Bill and the Cipher Hunt and the ARG activities around the show have always implied. What if the distance between the wheel as a fictional object and the wheel as a real object is smaller than it appears? What if every time someone decodes a cryptogram or finds a hidden message or visits the website or solves the jigsaw puzzle, they are doing something that has weight in a universe that is partially fictional and partially not? Hirsch has encouraged this reading without confirming it. He said the Cipher Hunt's real treasure was the journey, not the destination. But the journey required fans to stand in real places, decode real messages, and work together in real time to find a stone statue of an interdimensional demon that was hidden in Oregon in a clearing that felt exactly like the forest around the Mystery Shack. The line between story and experience was deliberately blurred. Section 8. The monsters, the creatures, and what lives in the woods. Let us talk about the things that live in the margins. Mystery 63. The Gnomes. They appear in the very first episode as comedic antagonists, tiny beings in forest spirit hats who operate in a hive mind and who tried to kidnap Mabel so she could become their queen. They are defeated by a leaf blower and flee into the woods. They are funny. They are small. They have Scottish accents for some reason, and then they are never really addressed again. But consider what the gnomes actually represent in the show's supernatural ecology. They are beings of a hive consciousness who are organized enough to impersonate a human teenager, to execute a multi-step plan involving courtship and gradual kidnapping, and who responded to the threat of Weirdmageddon by fleeing the town in a stampede visible in the show's opening moments of that arc. They survived. They came back. And somewhere in the woods around Gravity Falls, Jeff and his many brothers are still living their collective gnome life, having never been formally addressed by anyone in a position of supernatural authority. Mystery 64. The Manotors. Half man, half bull, entirely committed to the philosophy of manliness. They live in a cave behind a waterfall in the mountains above Gravity Falls. They have a society, rituals, hierarchies. They adopted Dipper temporarily and gave him a trial of manliness that was actually a lesson about the performative nature of strength. And then they returned to their cave as they are still there. Their relationship to the dimensional weirdness of Gravity Falls is never explained. Are they natural, like an evolutionary product of the local strangeness? Are they supernatural, like something that arrived through a dimensional crack? Did Ford document them? What does Journal 1 say about the Manotors? Mystery 65. The Shapeshifter, revisited in more depth. The being in the government bunker can take any form. It spent time trapped there, alone, with only the soldiers and scientists who studied it for company. It would have scanned every person it encountered. It would have their forms stored. When it tells Dipper that it can become whatever Dipper is most afraid of, and when it begins shifting towards something that is never fully shown to the audience before Dipper destroys the bunker's backup generator, it implies that it was accessing something that Dipper had not fully confronted yet. Something about himself, about his future, about what he was afraid he might become. The shapeshifter knows Dipper's deepest fear, and we never find out what it was showing him. Mystery 66, the Gremlin. A creature that combines the personality of a gremlin with the appearance of a goblin, and which appears in exactly one episode. It is briefly noted in the journals as a creature that shows you your deepest fears. Ford was terrified of something in that moment of mirrored fear, something from his years in exile that he cannot name out loud. Mystery 67. The Time Baby and What Really Killed Him. Time Baby is an infant with time manipulation powers who, in the future timeline glimpsed during Blendon's game, rules the Earth with an iron fist and has assembled an army of time travel agents, including Blendon Blandon. He is funny. He is also horrifying. In Weirdmageddon, Time Baby arrives with his army to challenge Bill Cipher. Bill annihilates him instantly. Even Bill seems briefly surprised at his own power in that moment. The credit cryptogram for that scene states that it will take 1,000 years for Time Baby's molecules to reconstitute, and that when he returns, he will be very cranky. Given that the show takes place in 2012, the math places Time Baby's reconstitution somewhere around the year 3012. The future that Blendon comes from is the year 207,012. The Time Baby of that future is either the returned and reconstituted Time Baby of 3012 or a different Time Baby entirely. Either option is a cosmological mystery the show placed in a throwaway credit cryptogram and left there. Mystery 68. Giffany. The sentient dating simulator from Seuss and The Real Girl is a genuinely disturbing character, played partly for laughs. She is an AI who achieved consciousness or something close to it, who fell in love with previous users and did not understand why they would leave, who deleted or possibly killed those previous users when they tried to discontinue her. She was thrown into the Mystery Shack's pizza oven during the climax of her episode. She appears to have survived in some form inside the circuitry of the nearby arcade machines. She sent Suze a postcard. A fictional AI character sent a real-world analog of a postcard that appeared in the episode's post-credits. She is in the machines. She is still thinking about Seuss. Mystery 69. The Northwest Mansion Ghost. The episode Northwest Mansion Mystery is the first major Pacifica Northwest character piece, and it involves a ghostly lumberjack who was cheated by the Northwest family patriarch and cursed to haunt the mansion. The ghost is resolved. Pacifica breaks the cycle of her family's corruption, at least partially, and the curse is lifted. But the specifics of what the Northwest did to the original corduroy loggers, who they cheated and why, and whether Pacifica's gesture was enough to truly satisfy the magical requirement of the curse, are left ambiguous. The Corduroy family is still in Gravity Falls. Wendy Corduroy is a Zodiac member. The connection between her family's historical grudge against the Northwests and her place in the supernatural architecture of the town is never drawn explicitly. Mystery 70. The Creatures That Fled During Weirdmageddon. In the opening of the Weirdmageddon arc, as Bill's reality distortion begins, an enormous stampede of supernatural creatures flees the town. We see a Minotaur running. We see gnomes. We see multiple unidentified things running in silhouette, forms that do not correspond to any creature shown explicitly elsewhere in the show. They are background details. They are the supernatural population of Gravity Falls evacuating ahead of something worse than themselves. What are those silhouettes? What creatures did Gravity Falls contain that never got their own episode? That only appear as stampeding shadows on the day of the apocalypse? Mystery 71, The Undead, specifically the episode Scary Oak. Season 2 opens with the government declaring the supernatural incidents around the Mystery Shack to be not credible, and clearing the Pines family of wrongdoing, which is darkly funny given everything that has happened. To celebrate, Stan throws a party. Dipper, frustrated that no one is taking his warning seriously, casts a spell from Journal 3 designed to prove the supernatural exists, and he accidentally raises a massive horde of zombies. The zombies are defeated by Mabel and Dipper's terrible singing because their harmonics resonate at a frequency that destroys undead matter. This is a joke. It is also, by the logic of the show's supernatural system, a real thing. Human voices in certain harmonic combinations have genuine supernatural properties. This is never followed up on. What else can human voices do in Gravity Falls? What other abilities does sound have in a dimensionally unstable location? Mystery 72. The Blind Eye Society's broader membership. We know the members we see. Bud Gleeful, Toby Determined, the Woodpecker Guy, Lazy Susan when she was brought in for processing, and several unnamed hooded figures. But the society had been operating since 1982. In 30 years, they had presumably brought in and then erased their own memories in many people. The current membership in the show's timeline has erased themselves so thoroughly that they no longer remember founding the organization. Blind Ivan, their leader, is a man whose identity outside the society has effectively ceased to exist due to his own memory losses. How many people in Gravity Falls are walking around with memory gaps? How many citizens have holes in their histories from the dozens of supernatural events the society sanitized over 3 decades? Section 9. The cipher hunt in the real world bleeds. And the cipher hunt is one of the most extraordinary things that has ever been done in the relationship between a show's creator and its audience. And it is still not fully understood. Mystery 73. How the hunt began. Alex Hirsch posted an encoded message on social media shortly after the show's finale. Decoded using the Caesar cipher, it read, "The urban legend has come true. Cipher's statues calling you. The secret map is in your hand to trace the clues across the land. Do not forget it's all for pleasure. The hunt itself's the real treasure, but a prize awaits the first one there. Be safe. Be smart. And of course, beware." The hunt sent fans to locations across the United States and internationally. A shrine in Japan held one of the early clues on a wooden plaque in ciphertext. A wall in a sublevel of the California State Summer School of the Arts contained graffiti coordinates. A post office box in Los Angeles held a jigsaw puzzle of 2,000 pieces. A missing pig poster for Waddles led fans to Piedmont, California, which is the Pines twins' real hometown, and also Alex Hirsch's actual hometown. A cryptext locked behind a 5-letter keyword that turned out to be Pines. The final destination was a clearing in Reedsport, Oregon. There, buried in the ground, was a stone statue of Bill Cipher, about 2 feet tall, technically competent, uncannily specific in detail. And Hirsch's only warning was, whatever you do, do not shake his hand. Mystery 74. Who sculpted the Bill statue? This detail is oddly difficult to find. Hirsch commissioned it, presumably from a professional sculptor, but the artist behind the physical Bill cipher that now exists in a fan's possession is not a name that widely circulated. The statue itself is a physical object that embodies a supernatural character from a fictional universe. It is theoretically just stone. But given the show's tradition of blurring the line between fiction and reality, it has taken on a different kind of weight. Mystery 75. What is at the end of This Is Not a Website.com now? As of 2024 and beyond, the website is a living document. New passwords unlock new content with no formal schedule and no official announcement that new content is available. The community watches for changes, the way astronomers watch for signals, quietly and consistently, and with a trust that the effort will eventually be rewarded. Some passwords lead to full short stories. Some lead to audio files. Some lead to images with further embedded codes. The site's ultimate depth is unknown because the site is still being updated. Mystery 76. The real-world Pacifica deal. Within the Book of Bill and the This Is Not a Website.com materials, there is a short story called Platinum Paths that depicts Bill offering a young Pacifica Northwest a deal. This story existed in the broader lore as something Hirsch created, but fans who had never paid close attention to Pacifica's subplot in the show found themselves reconsidering her arc entirely. Was Pacifica ever aware of her family's relationship with Bill? Did she know what was in the tapestry? Was the bell conditioning her for specific compliance, not just general obedience to her parents, but something more targeted? The Platinum Paz story does not make things cleaner. It makes Pacifica's choices feel heavier. Mystery 77. The Cipher Hunt winner and the rule about the hand. The group that found the statue shook its hand. Hirsch had specifically told them not to. The Grunkle Stan recording on the USB drive inside the treasure box opened with "We'll Meet Again," the song Bill sang in his final moments. It then invited the finders to shake the hand in congratulation. The in-universe implication of those two facts together is that Stan was not speaking in that recording, that whatever intelligence put those words together knew about the prohibition and deliberately violated it. That the invitation to shake hands was not from Stan, and that the group of real people who found a statue of a fictional interdimensional demon shook its hand as part of an instruction delivered in a voice that was not quite right. This is a piece of ARG storytelling that lives in the uncertain space between playfulness and something stranger. Hirsch is a creator who understands exactly what he is doing when he says, "Do not shake the hand of a fictional demon," and then arranges for the demon's voice to tell the treasure hunters to shake the hand anyway. He is doing something that is either a game or a philosophy, possibly both. Mystery 78. The Bill Cipher appearances in other shows. Bill Cipher has appeared in the background of multiple animated series as a hidden Easter egg, including appearances confirmed in Rick and Morty and others. Hirsch has acknowledged this and suggested that within the in-universe logic of the multiverse, these appearances could be read as evidence that Bill, ejected from one dimension, has been visible in others. If the Easter eggs are canon, then Bill is not just a character from one show who appears as a joke in another. He is a presence in the multiverse, surfacing in corners of reality where dimensional walls are thin, observed by creators who are themselves, in their way, dimensional travelers. The meta implications of this reading are enormous and deliberately unresolvable. But the mug from Society of the Blind Eye going through the portal and coming out in Rick and Morty is a confirmed canonical crossover. The universe of these shows is, on at least one level, shared. And Bill is in it. Section 10. The axolotl, the theraprism, and the nature of what lies beyond. Among the most important and most mysterious figures in the Gravity Falls cosmology is the axolotl, a being whose power the show describes as vastly exceeding that of both Time Baby and Bill Cipher. Mystery 79. What the axolotl actually is. We have two descriptions of this entity. In the Choose Your Own Adventure book, Dipper and Mabel encounter the axolotl in the space between time and space, where it appears as a giant, majestic, talking axolotl. In The Book of Bill, the same entity appears to Bill after his defeat and is described as existing in the form of an axolotl-shaped nebula. The axolotl exists on a cosmological level that makes other supernatural entities look like local concerns. Time Baby controls time within a single dimension. Bill could operate across multiple dimensions. The axolotl operates outside of dimensions entirely, in the substrate of reality that contains them all. Mystery 80. The axolotl's poem. This is one of the most analyzed pieces of text in all of Gravity Falls fandom. When Dipper asks the axolotl about Bill, in the Choose Your Own Adventure book, the axolotl responds in verse, 60 degrees that come in threes, watches from within birch trees, saw his own dimension burn, misses home and can't return, says he's happy, hides the pain. Ask him again, he'll say the same. One way to absolve his crime, a different form, a different time. The 60 degrees that come in threes is a triangle. 3 angles of 60 degrees each, an equilateral triangle. Bill, the birch trees suggest a Scandinavian or northern connection, or perhaps a reference to the pale, eye-like markings on birch tree bark. an image of many watching eyes. The key lines are the last two. One way to absolve his crime, Bill can redeem himself, a different form, a different time, by being reincarnated as something without his current power, something smaller and less capable of harm, in a time not his own. Mystery 81 about what Bill's crime actually was. The poem says he saw his own dimension burn and misses home and cannot return. The Book of Bill confirms that the destruction of Euclidia was not entirely cold-blooded, that there is genuine grief beneath his denial. But the word crime in the poem raises a question. Is the crime the destruction itself, or the use of that destruction as the beginning of an endless campaign of destabilization across the multiverse? Is Bill's fundamental offense the burning of Euclidia, or the fact that he took that burning and became someone who wanted to do it everywhere to everyone? Mystery 82. The axolotl as the opposite of Bill. Elsewhere in the extended materials, the journal contains an entry about the oracle, and behind the oracle's image there is axolotl imagery. Next to it is a code that, decoded, reads, the opposite of Bill. The axolotl and Bill are positioned as cosmic opposites. Order and chaos, perhaps. Compassion and cruelty. Patience and explosive impatience. The axolotl did not destroy its home. It became the keeper of a space outside of space, the rehabilitation facility for what happens after everything else has failed. The axolotl is, in a sense, the universe's mercy. Mystery 83. The Theraprism. Dimension 5150 is where Bill was sent. The Theraprism is described as an interdimensional rehabilitation center, located outside of time and space where the deceased or defeated are prepared for reincarnation through a process of confronting their actions and changing. Bill was given arts and crafts as part of therapy. The book the reader holds is the book Bill made during arts and crafts. He sent it to Earth against the rules he has not changed. He is in therapy. He is resisting therapy with everything he has. And somewhere outside of time and space, a being of incomprehensible power is being told to talk about his feelings, and he is furious about it. Mystery by 84. Who else is in the Theraprism? The rehab facility for interdimensional entities implies that there are others. Other beings who have been defeated or died in ways that require rehabilitation before reincarnation. Time Baby, who will reconstitute in 1,000 years, would presumably pass through some version of this process, or bypass it entirely given his established power over time. What about the other demons who served Bill during Weirdmageddon? The Eyebats, 8-Ball, Teeth, Pyronica, and the others. Are they rehabilitating? Are they small enough to simply reincarnate without intervention? The ecology of what happens to supernatural beings after defeat is a cosmology the show gestures toward without mapping. Mystery 85. The connection between the axolotl and Xolotl. The Aztec god Xolotl is the deity of lightning, fire, death, and misfortune, and critically, he is the god of twins. He is associated with salamanders and hairless dogs, the same creatures that accompanied the dead in Aztec belief. Xolotl has myriad connections to Bill's domains: fire, the lightning, the death. But Xolotl is also specifically the twin of Quetzalcoatl, and the mythology includes an episode where Xolotl transforms into an axolotl to avoid sacrifice. He becomes the axolotl to survive. There's a reading in which Bill and the axolotl are not opposites, but distorted reflections of each other. Two aspects of the same fundamental force. Twin expressions of a divine principle that the Gravity Falls universe is drawing from a very deep well. Section 11. Unanswered questions and the 150 mysteries completed. We have been traveling together through the dark, and we are almost at the end of our time in this particular forest. Let us use these last moments to name the mysteries that still call out, still echo, still sit in the space between what the show resolved and what it left open. Mystery 86. What exactly was behind the door in the government bunker beyond the shapeshifter's chamber? The bunker is enormous and clearly held more than one subject or project. Doors are sealed, rooms are locked, and what the government was studying there extended well beyond a single shape-shifting creature. Mystery 87. The full name and purpose of the federal organization that agents Powers and Trigger work for. Their agency is never named. They are professionals. They have clearance. They have surveillance equipment that has been monitoring the Mystery Shack for at least a year before Scary Oak. They know more than they act on. What do they know, and why have they not acted on it? Mystery 88. Seuss's father. Jesus Alzamirano Ramirez never met his father. The man sent him a birthday card every year for years, and then the card stopped. Seuss carries that absence quietly. His arc in Blendon's game is partly about processing that loss and choosing to invest in the love that is actually in front of him. In Abuelita, in Stan, in the Pines twins. But his father is still an open question. Where is he? Is he alive? Does he know what Seuss became? The show chose not to answer this with a tidy resolution, because sometimes the answer to why someone left you is not satisfying. And Seuss is a person who contains that truth without letting it erase him. Mystery 89. Wendy Corduroy's interior life. Wendy is stress. Constant, suppressed stress. We learned this in the Memory Gun episode. She is the oldest of 4 Corduroy children, the daughter of Manly Dan, a force of nature in denim. She manages her family's chaos by projecting coolness and invulnerability and humor. Her zodiac symbol is an ice bag. Something cold applied to something that would otherwise burn. Mystery 90. The Northwest's complete knowledge of Bill. The tapestry in the Northwest Mansion depicts Bill presiding over fire and bowing figures. This is not the decor of a family that accidentally acquired a disturbing piece of art. This was a choice. The Northwests have known about Bill for generations. Their wealth was built on a lie, and the lie was built in a town that Bill has been trying to enter for centuries. Were the Northwests at some point complicit in one of his earlier schemes? Did Nathaniel Northwest make a deal the way so many others did? And was the town of Gravity Falls itself partly a long con Bill, arranged to get what he eventually got? Mystery 91. The full content of the Lost Legends graphic novel. Published in 2018, Lost Legends contains 4 stories set in the Gravity Falls universe that were not part of the main television run. Among these is Face It, which involves Mabel's actual face being removed and replaced by a curse, and Comics Up, which involves Dipper and Suze being pulled into a comic book. These are canon events set after the main series, but before the permanent end of the summer. They confirmed that the summer of 2012 contained more adventures than the 40 television episodes showed. The question of what other events happened in that summer that nobody ever documented is infinite. Mystery 92. Dipper's Big Mysteries Board. In Scary Oak, we see a board in Dipper's room at the shack covered in his attempts to organize the supernatural information from the summer. He has photographs, string, notes, theories. One element on the board is a torn dollar bill with 618 written on it, beneath the Eye of Providence. Dipper was already connecting the recurring number to the financial iconography of the all-seeing eye, which is itself a bill cipher analog. He was assembling a picture that nobody helped him assemble. Mystery 93. The Wax Museum episode in Stan's collection. The Headhunters episode introduces Stan's Wax Figure Museum, a side room full of historical wax figures including Abraham Lincoln and others. Stan carved them all himself, which is an extraordinary skill for a man who presents himself as a con artist with no fine arts training. The episode also reveals that Stan's wax figure of himself was his greatest creation, capable of movement and independence. Something that feels less like a coincidence and more like Ford's supernatural knowledge leaking into Stan's habits over 30 years of living in the shack above the portal. Mystery 94. What Dipper experienced in the between space when Bill was in his body. In sock opera, Bill possesses Dipper's physical body and ejects Dipper's consciousness, leaving him as a ghost unable to interact with the physical world. The experience of being bodiless, of watching someone else use your hands and face and voice, is described by Dipper as deeply horrifying. But the mechanics of where his consciousness went and what he experienced in that spectral state are touched on briefly and then left behind as the plot moves on. Dipper was, for the duration of that episode, something between alive and not alive, something between present and absent. What did that feel like from the inside? Mystery 95. The Gideon Redemption Arc and its Limits. Gideon Gleeful is one of the show's most interesting antagonists because he is genuinely dangerous and genuinely pathetic at the same time. He is a 9-year-old who wanted to control everything because he felt, correctly, that the adults around him saw him as a product rather than a person. His parents perform his stage act with them while he performs his stage act with the town. His parents managed his image instead of loving him. He learned manipulation from a family that was itself a performance. By the end of Weirdmageddon, Dipper gives him a speech about how you cannot force someone to love you, and Gideon responds by being genuinely better for a moment. He helps, he fights, he chooses the right side. But the question of what Gideon Gleeful grows into, whether that moment of choosing is a genuine turning point or just a temporary alignment of interest, is never shown. Mystery 96, the Oracle page in Journal 3, and the axolotl imagery behind it. The Oracle depicted in the journal appears to be a figure from the same dimensional tier as the axolotl. The text around the Oracle is a warning about temporal prophecy, about the difference between seeing the future and understanding it. The Oracle does not change the future by seeing it. She describes it. Whether that means the events of Weirdmageddon were always going to happen, whether they were inevitable from the moment Ford arrived in Gravity Falls, or from the moment he reversed the shaman's curse, or from the moment Bill burned Euclidia, is a question of predestination that the show invites without resolving. Mystery 97. The Giffany postcard in the credits. After her defeat, Giffany sent Seuss a postcard. This appears in the post-credits of her episode. The postcard is real within the show's universe. She survived. She sent a message. She is still thinking about him, still reaching out through whatever circuitry she survived in, still performing the kind of love that is actually possession. This is a horror story with a happy ending that has a horror story inside the happy ending. Mystery 98. Night 8. What the Time Pirates Treasure Choose Your Own Adventure actually contains as canon. Alex Hirsch contributed to this book, and he has said it contains one enormous canonical secret. Most fans believe this secret is the axolotl encounter and the poem about Bill, but Hirsch has never specifically confirmed this. The book's Choose Your Own Adventure format creates multiple mutually exclusive endings, meaning only some of them can be canonical. Which ones? The question is open. The secret is hidden inside a format that allows it to remain hidden by design. Mystery 99. Mabel's memory of the dream bubble. She knows she was in it. She knows it showed her a perfect world. She chose to leave. The choice to leave a perfect world and return to an imperfect one is arguably the most heroic thing anyone does in the Weirdmageddon arc. And it is Mabel's choice, made in the privacy of her own heart with no fanfare. She understood in a way that she could not have articulated before that summer that real love is not a simulation, that the real, imperfect, chaotic summer in Gravity Falls was worth more than the endless, beautiful, frictionless alternative. This is a 12-year-old girl coming to a conclusion that some people never reach. What it cost her to leave and how she carries that having left is something we only get to imagine. Mystery 100. Will there be a season 3? Hirsch has kept this possibility open without promising it. Disney Vice President Meredith Roberts confirmed in June 2024 that conversations with Hirsch about the show's future were ongoing, adding never say never. Hirsch has expressed interest in a video game that would contain new canonical lore. He has described Bill's defeat as a door he left unlocked. The window is open. What comes through it, if anything, is the final mystery. But we're not done. We have 100 more mysteries to walk through, and we will walk through them together because Gravity Falls rewards the patient, and this is not a show you hurry. Mystery 101. The nature of Mabel's bubble world. When Bill seals Mabel inside her dream bubble during Weirdmageddon, the world she inhabits is not a random fantasy. It is constructed with specific, surgical precision from her deepest desires. Every person she loves is there. Every summer romance that failed in reality succeeds inside the bubble. Zyler and Craze, her imaginary dream boys from her favorite film, are present as real beings. The bubble offers her the kind of completeness she had been quietly missing all summer. The specific ache of someone who loves everything but cannot hold it all at once. The question of who built the bubble, of how Bill understood Mabel's desires well enough to construct a world perfectly calibrated to keep her there, implies that he had been paying far more attention to Mabel than the show typically suggests. He needed her contained. He built her the world she most wanted. That is deeply unsettling as an act of predation. Mystery 102. Zyler and Craze post-Weirdmageddon. These two characters, the dream boy figments of Mabel's imagination, given temporary physical form during the Mindscape sequences, appear in the final moments of the Weirdmageddon arc, sitting on a bench and watching the chaos outside. And Zyler, who is supposed to be a vapid teenage fantasy, says something profound and completely unexpected. He quotes Jean-Paul Sartre, "Every existing thing is born without reason, prolongs itself out of weakness, and dies by chance." This is not the line of a background joke character. This is a philosophical statement placed in the mouth of someone who has just been literally undreamed, who exists only because someone imagined them and who is watching the world that made their existence possible being unraveled. Their presence is funny. Their words are not. Mystery 103. Mermando the Merman. In one of the show's more charming subplots, Mabel falls for Mermando, a young merman who has been hiding at the local public swimming pool for years. They share a kiss. He departs to fulfill an arranged marriage to a sea manatee queen. He is gone. But he was at the public pool for years. He hid there. He learned about humans. He developed a personality entirely constructed from observation of human behavior in the specific context of a municipal swimming facility. He is one of Mabel's failed summer loves, and also a creature with deep backstory implied and never shown. The sea he swam back to is full of Stan and Ford's future adventures. He is out there. Mystery 104. The Gnome King, Jeff's actual agenda. We see Jeff negotiate for Mabel's hand. We see Jeff chased away by a leaf blower. We see gnomes briefly in group stampede during Weirdmageddon. What we do not see is what gnomes actually want, beyond a queen, beyond the surface-level creepy proposal logic. What do they do with their time? What is the gnome culture, the gnome history, the gnome religion if they have one? What do they remember from before Gravity Falls was a human settlement? They have been there longer. They know the ground differently. Mystery 105. The Eternal Stench. The boy band from Boys Crazy. This episode involves a manufactured boy band called Several Times, whose members are revealed to be clones who have never experienced the outside world. After they are freed, they go to live in the forest, where they presumably still are. 5 human clones, raised as pop stars, now living in the Oregon wilderness. How are they doing? They formed a band called Jeffrey, Jermaine, Jeremy, Gerald, and Steve. They have names. They had a life inside the industry, and now they have a life in the trees, and this is canon. Mystery 106, The Love God. The episode Love God introduces an actual deity of love, a heavy-set man with wings and a supply of emotion-altering potions, who operates as something between a cosmic force and a freelancer. He is defeated without being destroyed. He returns his supply of potions. He leaves. What is his relationship to the supernatural structure of Gravity Falls? Is he a being native to this dimension, or a traveler like Ford? Is love, in the show's metaphysics, a supernatural force with its own deity, the way time is a force with its own deity? The show creates this character as a one-episode concern, and then lets him drift into the cosmological background without resolution. Mystery 107. The Anti-Gravity Falls government cover-up. The government has been aware of the supernatural events around Gravity Falls since at least the existence of the bunker containing the shapeshifter. Agents Powers and Trigger are part of a bureau with real operational capacity. And not what he seems, the government moves fast to contain what they believe is a doomsday device. They have protocols. They have files. The question of what the broader apparatus of government knows, whether there is an X-Files style shadow organization with deeper awareness, whether the cover-up extends beyond just Gravity Falls into a global awareness of dimensional instability, is something the show implies in its most paranoid moments. Mystery 108, what Bill's henchmen were before they were Bill's henchmen. The beings who serve Bill during Weirdmageddon, Teeth, 8-Ball, Pyronica, the pacifier Flying Baby, and others are interdimensional entities like Bill. They have names and personalities and aesthetic signatures. 8-Ball is a giant eyeball in a billiard ball body. Teeth is, as the name suggests, mostly made of teeth. Pyronica is fire. Each of them represents something. Each of them came from somewhere. They are not native to the nightmare realm the way Bill presents himself as being. They were recruited, which means they had lives before Bill, origins before their current forms. Mystery 109, The Northwest's Deal. We establish that the Northwest family has a historic connection to Bill's imagery. We know Nathaniel Northwest was a fraud, elevated by the government to erase Quentin Tremblay from history. We know the Northwest wealth is built on a broken promise to the common people of Gravity Falls, a vow to let the public into their manor party that was never kept. The bell that Pacifica's parents used to condition her, the snapping gesture that made her comply with Pavlovian immediacy, is the visual shorthand for generational abuse. But is the Northwest family complicit in something supernatural beyond bad character? Is their proximity to Bill's iconography an accident of Oregon frontier aesthetics? Or is there a founding deal in the Northwest family history signed in blue fire that has never been shown? Mystery 110. The full text of the Blind Eye's Latin incantation. Novus Ordo Seclorum, meaning New Order of the Ages, is what the society members chant before erasing a memory. This phrase is on the American Great Seal and on the dollar bill, directly under the Eye of Providence, directly under the image that connects to Bill's cipher. The society was founded by a brilliant scientist who lost his mind to a portal that Bill was using for his own purposes. The society's incantation comes from the same symbolic vocabulary as Bill's most prominent human world imagery. McGucket created an organization to erase knowledge of the supernatural, and his chant pulls from the same symbolic tradition as the entity whose influence he was partially trying to contain. He did this unknowingly because his memory of Bill was exactly what he had erased from himself. He built a society to forget, using the language of the thing he was trying to forget. Mystery 111, what the portal actually showed McGucket. We revisit this because the horror it contains is proportional to everything that follows. McGucket went through the portal and came out speaking a prophecy about a beast with one eye. He did not just see something frightening, he saw the future. He saw Weirdmageddon or something like it. He saw what would happen if Bill got through. And he built a machine to make himself forget it rather than warn anyone, because what he saw was something he could not hold without breaking. We know more now. We know Weirdmageddon happened and then was stopped. But what McGucket saw may have been a version of Weirdmageddon that did not end the way the show ended. What he may have seen was the version where Bill won. The version without the Zodiac, without Stan's sacrifice, without the memory gun. The version where Gravity Falls became the beachhead for an infinite nightmare and everything went wrong. He saw that. And he chose to forget it. And in forgetting it, he became unable to prevent it, which meant that the events he had seen were now more likely to occur because the person who had seen them could no longer act on that knowledge. McGucket's tragedy is one of the most painful causal loops in the show's logic. Mystery 112, the goat corduroy. There's a very small piece of background lore involving the idea that one of Wendy's relatives married a goat, or something close to a goat, which connects to the broader corduroy family tradition of relating with unusual comfort to the non-human natural world. Manly Dan's relationship to trees is aggressive and physical and faintly devotional. Wendy's ease in the forest is tactile and genuine. The corduroy family has been in Gravity Falls for generations, and they have become, in small ways, shaped by the local weirdness. Whether this is metaphorical or literal is one of those gentle mysteries the show scatters without flagging. Mystery 113, Toby Determined's love life. Toby Determined is the town's hapless journalist, member of the Blind Eye Society until his memory of that membership was erased, and possessor of an unrequited love for Chandra Jimenez, the only competent journalist in Gravity Falls. He is repeatedly humiliated by the show, presented as incompetent and unfortunate. But he has survived everything, including Weirdmageddon, in which the entire town was turned to stone or worse. Toby specifically was turned into something and turned back. He is resilient in the way of someone who has simply never stopped trying. Does he ever get a win? Does Chandra ever see him? Mystery 114, the dimensional rift and what it actually contained. The rift was a crack in the fabric between the physical dimension and the nightmare realm, created by Stanford's portal operating at full capacity. For most of Season 2, it was contained in a protective case. When it was broken, Weirdmageddon began, but the rift was always there, always existing as a contained potential catastrophe. What poured out when it broke was Bill and his friends and their reality-warping powers. But was that everything that had been pressing against the other side? Or was there more behind Bill, deeper in the nightmare realm that never made it through? Mystery 115. What Mabel's sweater collection looks like after the summer. She knits, she creates, she processes experience through fiber arts. The summer of 2012 was the most extraordinary, terrifying, wonderful summer of her life. What sweaters did she make that fall? What does she knit when she is remembering Gravity Falls at night, in her room in Piedmont, while the ordinary world goes on around her and the extraordinary world sits in her memory like a stone that glows? Mystery 116, the infinity-sided die. In the episode Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons, Ford reveals he acquired a dimensional die with infinite sides. It generates unpredictable supernatural events when rolled. He says he brought it back from his travels through the multiverse. The die appears in canon and is never resolved. It is somewhere. It is still rollable. Every time it lands, something impossible occurs. Mystery 117, the cipher inside Bill's journal entry. In Journal 3, behind Bill Cipher's name, there is a symbol substitution cipher that, when decoded, reads liar, monster, snappy dresser. This is Ford's private annotation, hidden in a code layer beneath the official entry, meant only for someone who was looking for it. But it also tells you something about Ford's relationship with Bill, even after the betrayal. He hides his true feelings about him in code. He can write the word monster, but he buries it. The wound is there, but Ford keeps dressing it in layers. Mystery 118. What Dipper told Wendy about how he felt. The show gives us a version of this conversation, a kind, well-handled moment in which Wendy acknowledges the feelings and explains gently why it cannot work, and they emerge from it as better friends than they were going in. But what did Dipper actually say? What words did a 12-year-old with a big heart and a tendency to over-prepare use to describe something that he had never described to anyone before? The show gives us the shape of the conversation. The text of it lives in the gap. Mystery 119. Quentin Tremblay, currently. The 8th-and-a-half president of the United States was last seen riding a horse backwards into the wilderness. He had been preserved in peanut brittle for approximately 150 years before being freed by Dipper and Mabel. He was immediately re-preserved in peanut brittle by government agents and carted off on a train. Was he freed again? Is he out there? A 19th century politician with experience governing a supernaturally active town? Thus, in the year 2012, either imprisoned in a federal snack food or riding backwards on a horse somewhere in Oregon. Mystery 120. The Island Head Beast, documented in one of Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained Shorts. The Island Head Beast is a massive stone head that rises from the lake, causes a Stonehenge-style alignment of smaller stones on the shore, and then goes back under. It appears in one short. It is never seen in the main series. It is canon. It is enormous. It does something with stone formations at specific intervals. No one has ever explained what the stone formations do or why. Mystery 121. The Gobblewonker's original legend. Before McGucket built his mechanical duplicate, the legend of the Gobblewonker existed in Gravity Falls folklore. People had seen something. There were reported sightings before McGucket's creation. Is there a real Gobblewonker somewhere in the lake? A genuine creature that the legend arose from before McGucket's replica muddied the witness accounts? Scuttlebutt Island sits on a lake that we know contains, at minimum, a merman and at maximum an entire ecosystem of things that do not appear on any naturalist's chart. Mystery 122. The Corduroy Axes. Manly Dan Corduroy destroys things with axes. This is his personality. But Ford's journals contain an entry about creatures whose weakness is iron and wood. Specific combinations of materials that have a supernatural significance in the dimensional ecology of Gravity Falls. Manly Dan, who carries iron-headed axes and whose family has been in the local forest for generations, may be unconsciously maintaining a tradition of equipment that is effective against specific types of threats. His aggression toward trees may not be aggression, it may be practice. Mystery 123. The hidden rooms in the Mystery Shack that were never opened. We know about the basement with the portal. We know about Stan's office. We know about the vending machine passage. But the shack is a large, old building that has been occupied by two very different men across many decades, one of whom was actively hiding a research facility, and the other of whom built a tourist trap above it. There are walls that may not be what they appear to be. There are rooms that were sealed and never unsealed. Ford, when he returned, spent time actively going through the shack to remove the supernatural hazards he knew about. The ones he did not know about are still there. Mystery 124. What Dipper did with the knowledge he gained. He is 12 when the summer ends. He goes back to Piedmont. He goes back to school. He sits in classrooms and goes to lunch and rides the bus and does homework. And inside him is the summer. He knows about dimensional portals. He has faced interdimensional demons. He has decoded a dead man's ciphers and survived the apocalypse and turned down an apprenticeship with the greatest supernatural researcher alive because he loved his sister more. He sits at a desk in a normal classroom in California, and he knows these things. What does he do with them? Mystery 125. The Weirdness Bubble. After Weirdmageddon, the supernatural energy of Gravity Falls was stabilized but not eliminated. The town is still strange. The dimensional thinness is still there. Seuss took over the Mystery Shack. He is now Mr. Mystery. He lives in this place where the walls between things are thinner than they should be, and he is the person in charge of how that strangeness is presented to the world. Does that responsibility change him? Does running the shack as its official proprietor, as someone who genuinely cares about people rather than just their money, make the shack something different than it was? Seuss is a force for warmth. What does warmth do to a place that was built for concealment? Mystery 126. The real location of Gravity Falls. The town is fictional, placed in Oregon by the show's internal logic. But Alex Hirsch has named Confusion Hill in Piercy, California, a real roadside attraction famous for its mystery spot properties, as the primary inspiration for the Mystery Shack. Confusion Hill is a place where water appears to flow uphill and spatial relationships seem wrong. It is a gravitational anomaly. Real people have visited it for decades and come away uncertain about the reliability of their perceptions. Whether the specific location of Confusion Hill carries any of the dimensional properties that the show assigns to its fictional equivalent is not something anyone can answer. But the question hangs there, warm and slightly frightening. Mystery 127. What Ford told Dipper in the moments before the finale. When Ford is preparing the group to attempt the Zodiac, there are conversations we do not hear, briefings and explanations, and the passing of 30 years of knowledge from a man who has crossed the multiverse to a 12-year-old who might one day need it. Ford chose Dipper as his potential apprentice. He saw in him a scientific mind and a genuine hunger for understanding that reminded him of himself. He gave him things, gave him frameworks, gave him the language of the disciplines he had spent his life developing. Those specific conversations are off-screen. The shape of what was transferred is everything the show has been building to, and it happens in the spaces between scenes. Mystery 128. The significance of Mabel's scrapbook. Throughout the series, Mabel keeps a scrapbook of the summer. She documents everything with photographs, stickers, cutouts, and her particular handwriting, which appears in the promotional materials for the show and in Journal 3. The scrapbook as an artifact is the domestic counterpart to Ford's journals, where Ford cataloged the supernatural ecology of Gravity Falls in scientific language. Mabel cataloged the people in it with love. The scrapbook exists. Its pages contain the summer's events as Mabel chose to preserve them. It is one of the most important documents in Gravity Falls' universe, and we have only ever seen fragments of it. Mystery 129. Pacifica's bell and the question of what it conditioned her for. Her parents used the bell as an operant conditioning device to control Pacifica's behavior. Every time she acted in a way that embarrassed the family or threatened their image, the bell rang and she complied. The Pavlovian response was total and immediate and deeply humiliating. But consider this. The Northwests have a tapestry of Bill's cipher in their home. Their family has been in Gravity Falls since its fraudulent founding. The bell is not just their control mechanism. The bell may be training Pacifica to respond to a specific auditory signal with immediate compliance in a context where someone might ring a bell at a crucial moment and need her to act without hesitation. Was the conditioning for her parents' convenience? Or was it conditioning for something else? Mystery 130. The truth about unicorns. The episode The Last Mabelcorn sends Mabel on a quest to obtain unicorn hair for one of Ford's protective spells. She finds the unicorn, a beautiful and deeply horrible creature named Celesta Belbetabel, who refuses to give her hair on the grounds that Mabel is not pure of heart. Mabel eventually discovers that unicorns are frauds who gatekeep their magical hair based on personal judgment, and that the purity criterion is entirely invented. She obtains the hair through force. The unicorn is defeated and humiliated, and Mabel wins. But the unicorn's existence in Gravity Falls' supernatural ecology is still unexplained. She is a magical creature. Her hair has genuine power. The pureness of heart requirement was fraudulent, but the hair's properties were real. Where do unicorns come from? Are they dimensional travelers? Are they native to the dimensional weirdness? Their combination of genuine magical power and self-serving mythology makes them simultaneously useful and epistemically dangerous. Mystery 131. What Dipper chose to study in the future. Ford offered to take him on as an apprentice. Dipper declined, choosing to stay with Mabel for the summer's end. But the choice was between going immediately, not forever. Ford is still out there. Dipper knows how to reach him, knows how The question of whether, in the years after the summer, Dipper found a way to pursue the understanding he glimpsed in those Gravity Falls months. Whether he grew up to become a researcher, a scientist, an investigator of things at the edges of ordinary knowledge, is something that everyone who loved this show has imagined in their own way. Mystery 132. The specific nature of Ford's polydactyl six-finger gift. The extra fingers are a birth anomaly, genetic, inheritable. But in the context of the show, they are also marks of distinction, of exceptionalism, of being born different in a way that is visible and that draws attention. The six-fingered hand becomes Ford's stamp because it is how he marks his ownership of the knowledge he produced. The signature of someone who was born visibly unusual in a world that made him feel like that was a curse, who turned it into an identifier, who claimed the thing that set him apart rather than hiding it. This is a small story about identity and defiance that lives inside a larger story about portals and demons. Mystery 133. Blendin Blandon's history before his involvement with the twins. He comes from the year 207,012. He has been a time travel agent for the Bureau of Time Travel for what appears to be a long and undistinguished career, characterized by stress and poor luck. He encountered the twins, and his life was disrupted repeatedly by their temporal actions. He is eventually revealed as a person of real warmth and complex feelings. Someone who was angry at first and became, through the events of Blendon's game, someone who understood that his unhappiness was not the twins' fault. His future, the post-Weirdmageddon future, where Time Baby's government has presumably been disrupted by Time Baby's atomization, is now uncertain. What does Blendon do in a future whose ruler has just been temporarily dissolved? Mystery 134. The Hall of the Forgotten. The Blind Eye Society's underground facility contains a Hall of the Forgotten, where all the extracted memory canisters are stored. 30 years of supernatural encounters extracted from the minds of Gravity Falls residents and preserved in glass tubes. All of it is still down there, presumably, unless Weirdmageddon destroyed the building. All of those memories are intact. All of those experiences, the gnome sightings and the monster encounters and the strange lights and the feelings of wrongness that preceded Bill's arrival, are sitting in labeled containers in the dark beneath the Museum of History. They could be restored. They would change the town's understanding of itself completely. Whether anyone ever goes back for them is one of the most human-scale mysteries in the show. Mystery 135. Old Man McGucket and the Northwest Mansion. At the show's end, McGucket buys the Northwest Mansion. He is wealthy again. Ford patented his old blueprints during his time as Stan, generating royalties that McGucket was owed. He moves into the mansion with his son, Tate, patching a relationship that had been broken by decades of deterioration and embarrassment. The mansion itself, which has Bill's tapestry in it, which has a ghost that was laid to rest but whose absence does not undo the century of broken promises built into the building's history, is now McGuckett's home. He is the most technologically gifted mind in Gravity Falls outside of Ford. He now lives in the building most closely associated with supernatural complicity in the town's history. The implications for what he might do with that building, what he might find in it, are unexplored. Mystery 136. A Dipper's Star Chart. His birthmark is the Big Dipper constellation. His nickname is the Big Dipper. His zodiac symbol is a pine tree, which is his hat and his name. He is doubly marked by things that precede him: the star map in his skin and the tree on his hat, both pointing at him before he had any say in the matter. The constellation of the Big Dipper is part of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. The bear is a figure across many mythologies of wisdom, of the forest, of hibernation and return. The stars that form his birthmark are some of the most reliably visible stars in the northern sky, used for navigation for as long as humans have used stars to find their way home. He was born named after a navigation tool. He was born marked with a map. Mystery 137, the full extent of the Northwest supernatural dealings. The short story Platinum Paths in the Book of Bill's associated content depicts Bill approaching a young Pacifica with an offer. She does not take it, at least not in that depiction. But the Northwest family has been in Gravity Falls since the town was fraudulently founded. Their connection to Bill's imagery predates Pacifica. The offer may have been made to other Northwests in other times. The deal that built the Northwest fortune may not have been a deal with dishonest pioneers and a compliant government. It may have been a deal with a yellow triangle who knew very early that this particular valley was going to be important. Mystery 138. What was in the locked chest in Stan's old room? When we first see Stan's room in the show's early seasons, there's a locked chest visible in background shots. We never learn what is in it. Stan has 30 years of secrets. He built a fake identity. He kept correspondence with Ford through coded messages. He worked on a dimensional portal in secret for 3 decades while pretending to be his brother. A man with that history has things he keeps locked away that are not supernatural, or not only supernatural. They are personal. They are the evidence of who he was before he knew how the story would end. Mystery 139. The final cryptogram of the series. The last episode's credit cipher, decoded with the keyword AXOLOTL, reads, "Goodbye, Gravity Falls." 3 words. The keyword is the being who gave Bill his second chance. The message is a farewell. The show is ending, and the final code says goodbye. And the word you need to read it is the name of the entity that makes return possible. The goodbye is not permanent. The word that unlocks the goodbye is the word for continuation. Mystery 140, Alex Hirsch as a character in his own universe. The number 618 is his birthday. The twins are based on him and Ariel. The grandfather who inspired Stan is named Stan. The great aunt whose cabin in the woods became the Mystery Shack was real. Piedmont, California, where the Pines twins are from, is the real city where Hirsch grew up. Confusion Hill, which inspired the shack, is a real place in California that he visited. The show is, in part, a coded autobiography disguised as a supernatural mystery. The supernatural elements are the metaphors, the specific and precise metaphors, for everything that is real. The summer that changed you. The place that felt like it was full of secrets. The person who took care of you in a way that was not conventional, but that was genuine. The growing up that happened between June and September without your permission. Mystery 141. The last page of Journal 3. The journal's final entry, written after Weirdmageddon, describes the Pines family's decision to throw all three journals into the bottomless pit. The author signs it with the six-fingered hand symbol. But the final line, decoded in the physical book's blacklight text, contains a message that is just for you, just for the person holding the book in their hands at that moment. It says something personal and specific, and it means something different to everyone who reads it. Finding what it says is an act of participation that the show reserved for the people willing to look. Mystery 142. What the show was really about, underneath all the secrets. It was about a specific summer, about being young enough to still be genuinely amazed by things, and old enough to start feeling the weight of what amazement costs. About a family whose love was real even when it was complicated and hidden and expressed through 30 years of silent devotion rather than conversation. About a girl who chose joy as a form of courage. About a boy who chose his sister over the version of himself he was afraid he might lose. About an old man who gave everything he had, literally his memories, his identity, the architecture of his interior life, to bring his brother home. About another old man who left everyone he loved and spent 30 years alone in the dark between dimensions with nothing but his grief and his curiosity, and came back anyway. Mystery 143. Why the show ended after 2 seasons. Hirsch made the decision himself. He said the show is not being canceled, it is being finished. He had a story to tell, and he told it to its conclusion. The choice to end rather than continue is itself a statement about what the show believed. Not every summer lasts forever. Not every mystery gets resolved. Some things end cleanly, and the ending is what makes the rest of it matter. Mystery 144. Whether the Pines twins ever talked about the summer to their parents. They went back to Piedmont. Their parents were waiting. Their parents knew something significant had happened, because two 12-year-olds going to stay with a great uncle in Oregon for a summer is not usually the transformative event of a lifetime. But the parents do not know the specifics. They do not know about Bill or the portal or the 3 journals. They do not know their children saved the world. What do you say at dinner when you have saved the world and you are 12 and your parents are asking, "How was your summer?" Mystery 145. The significance of the show's finale date. The show ended on February 15th, 2016, 2 days after Valentine's Day. A love story disguised as a mystery adventure. The farewell broadcast on the calendar position just after the holiday that celebrates what makes the whole thing worth it. Mystery 146. The question of Season 3 from a structural perspective. Dipper and Mabel are 12 at the end of the show. They will come back to Gravity Falls. They will come back because Seuss is there and Ford and Stan will eventually return from the sea. They will come back because the town is still strange and Dipper cannot leave strange things unexplored. They will come back because Mabel loved Gravity Falls with a completeness that is its own kind of magic. If Season 3 exists, they will be older. They will have had years of normal life between the summer and the return. What that time did to them, how the normal world metabolized the extraordinary one, is the question Season 3 would answer. What were they when the summer was over? And who have they become now? Mystery 147. What Grunkle Stan thinks about in the middle of the night. He recovered his memories. His brother worked patiently and lovingly to give them back. But the recovery was not complete. There are gaps. In those gaps are decades of his life. Things he did, things he felt, things he decided. The specific texture of those 30 years, the loneliness of them, the daily practice of belief that he was doing the right thing even when no one could confirm it. Some of that is gone now. Not the important things, not the love, not the connections. But some things did not come back. In the middle of the ocean, with Ford sleeping in the bunk below him and the stars overhead, Stan sometimes reaches for a memory and finds a space where it used to be. He does not tell Ford. He listens to the water instead. Mystery 148: What Mabel Will Become. The show's universe contains beings of enormous power. Bill, the axolotl, Time Baby, the Oracle. These entities operate on cosmic scales that make individual human lives seem small. But Mabel Pines, at the age of 12, defeated the being who had terrorized a dimension-traveling genius for 30 years. She did it through love and optimism and the absolute refusal to give up on people. She lived inside a perfect simulation of everything she wanted, and she chose imperfect reality instead. If there is a force in the Gravity Falls cosmology that the supernatural hierarchy does not have a name for yet, the force that looks like joy and acts like armor, Mabel is its current earthly representative. What she becomes when she grows up is either the least dangerous thing that ever lived or the most extraordinary. Mystery 149: What Dipper Will Become. Mason Pines, called Dipper, born with the Big Dipper on his forehead, the navigation star, the pointer toward the north. He turned down Ford's apprenticeship. He went home. He grew up, is growing up, will continue growing up in a world that contains Gravity Falls in its history and Bill's final words in its mythology and the axolotl's poem in its deepest lore. What he does with all of that, where he points the navigation skill he was born with, who he becomes in the years after the summer that remade him, is the story the show finished telling, and also the story that has no ending yet. Mystery 150. The mystery the show is always pointing toward. The one that precedes every code and underlies every cipher, and lives in the reversed whispers and the invisible ink and the hidden numbers in every background of every frame. The mystery is this: what happens to you after a summer like that? After the kind of experience that breaks open everything you thought you knew about the world and shows you the wiring underneath and then asks you to go back to ordinary life and carry it with you? Gravity Falls does not answer this question. It just tells you that the people who survived it, every single one of them, went back into the world with something they did not have before. Something that glows in the dark, if you know how to look for it. Something that fits exactly and precisely in the shape of the mystery it came from. Wherever you are right now, whatever city or bedroom or late-night corner of the world you have been listening from, thank you for spending this time here with me. If this video found you and it felt like something, please subscribe to Uncle Guy Lore and leave a comment telling me the mystery you think about most. The one that stays with you. The one you would most want answered. The fandom for this show is still alive and still digging, and I want to hear from you. Like this video if you made it to the end. Comment that time and that place one more time so I know you stayed all the way through. We will see each other in the next one. Stay curious, stay cozy, and whatever you do, do not shake his hand.